Hello, friends, and welcome to something that's been a long time in the making. We'll see how it goes. But my name is Eric, and unlike some of my recent live streams where I was doing a lot of hands-on development with Shiny, and in particular a very cool project with a calendar I'm working on, we're going to take a little break from that this week because I happen to be giving a talk at the Use R conference, which is currently underway, but the talk will be on Friday, about using open source for media streaming with R content. And so I'd imagine a lot of you will be watching this after that talk, but there's a certain few of you I think are tuning in live, then you're going to get the first crack at some of this advice that I'm about to share that definitely cannot fit in a 20-minute talk that I'll have on Friday. So I am super excited to kick this off, and this won't be the only tutorial about OBS, but the best part is, with this being live, you all get to ask questions, and we will see what we can do to do some leveling up on OBS with streaming. So I'm happy to be here. I'm still not quite 100%. This annoying little cold thing is kind of like a bug that just doesn't go away, but I'm at least able to talk better than I was last week. So let's first say hello to our awesome chat, and I do see some familiar faces or handles. Energy Eric, hello, and Jesse, welcome. That was quite an adventure last night on Sliced. I was certainly pulling for you, and I can definitely sympathize with what's happened on that. Allison Co, hello, and Tan Ho, awesome, great to be here. I didn't mean to open up wounds on that, but hey, your costume rocked it as always. So yeah, so let's see. Let's just kind of get into some things here. So OBS, if you've never heard about this acronym before, it is called Open Broadcaster Software. And so let's actually go a little tour, if you will, to the website. Let's flip some bits here, which I'm sure I'll be covering in future tutorials. Let's see if anything breaks here. Of course.
Thank you for the follow, it's Tony.
Oh, Tony, thank you for the follow. Much appreciated. That is awesome. So, that will be another tutorial, is how I connected those bits, and we might even touch on it tonight if we have time. So, OBS Studio. This is a very unique piece of software. Now, I will say that if you are coming into this new, it's going to have an interface that I will put it delicately, is a little intimidating. There is a lot going on here because it does a whole lot. Now, my venture here is to say this is not unlike R itself. R, via its awesome community of packages, you can do just about anything with data science in R. Of course, I've been doing Shiny apps, I'm doing AI ML stuff, I've been doing classical analysis. It saved my dissertation years ago, so R almost has no limits, if you will. It's only the imagination, really. Now, OBS is a very similar story with video and streaming. It is also cross-platform, if you notice on the website. It is completely cross-platform. Windows, Mac, and Linux. And the best part is that OBS is cross-platform natively. Now, what I mean by that is that OBS itself is not an Electron-like app like you would see with Slack or Teams or a lot of the other kind of web-like desktop apps that are really just Chromium shoved into Electron. These are native versions using the native software toolkits on each platform, but it looks basically the same on each platform. In fact, For work, I have a Mac, and guess what? I've thrown OBS on that too. I'm even starting to experiment doing screencasts for work projects with OBS, because why not? So it's nice that I can take the skills I've learned from this fun stuff and apply it to the day job stuff, occasionally, of course. Now, I will say that when you look at how OBS is used, the fact that it's cross-platform means that we have quite a large user base, and it is basically the de facto standard for streaming, certainly in the realms of streaming gaming content. I was never, I would say, hip enough to try this out when I was really in my heyday of gaming, but I have scratched that itch a little bit recently, which I might get to in a bit. But the best part is, OBS doesn't have to be used for just gaming content. It can be used for anything, really. And my eyes started to open a little bit late last year, actually longer than that. It was about a couple years ago, when a brilliant software engineer at our studio, Jim Hester, who you may know as the author of packages like Glue and other things like that, he started doing some screencasts on YouTube, and they had a nice distinctive look to it. And I was like, I saw him at one of the R Studio conferences, and I said, hey, I love your tutorials. What are you doing with that? How did you make it? He's like, oh, in Jim's tones, like, I use OBS. I like it. And I'm like, wow, really? And that's when I knew, okay, maybe I started looking at this a little bit. Still didn't quite take the plunge yet, but then one of the people I look up to a lot in the Linux community, the author or the architect of the Ubuntu Mate distribution, Martin Winpress, he, when the pandemic hit, found himself with a little spare time to try new things, and he started doing his software development of Ubuntu Mate as screencasts, live streams on YouTube. And he was using OBS. And I thought, okay, now that's two people I look up to quite a bit. And then Martin gave me a little tease. He goes by Wimpy on the online circles. He gave me a little tease that in the near future, this is early this year, he would do a tutorial about how he uses OBS. And at this point, I am hooked. I'm like, okay, I gotta see this, because he did some really slick things with it. It's stuff I wanted to do for the Shiny Dev series. And I was just chomping at the bit. I was politely nudging him, like, when's the tutorial coming? When's it coming? Because I can't wait to see it. And then he obliged in April. And I'm going to play for you a little clip from that. We'll see if this totally breaks things or not. Let's see. Where Martin definitely made it a little personal, we'll call it that. Now, let me know if you can't hear this, because I can't remember if I've... In fact, I better check that right now as we speak. There's a simple thing I'll check. Yep, that would have stunk. Okay, I've checked that bit. Okay, let's listen to what Martin has to say.
It's a little less crazy than last night, but thank you all for joining. There's a lot of familiar faces. Hello, Jamie, TC, Paul, Joshua again, Ali, Craig, our podcast. This one's just for you, right? You've been waiting on this for a long time. I hope if you've got questions.
So that's what I want to do. I'm gonna kind of pay it forward, so to speak. Martin has taught me quite well, and I want to do the same thing for the art community. There's a bunch of you that do your own streams. You do awesome jobs, and I'd love to be able to share the knowledge. So we're gonna start tonight, because like I said, this is a journey. There's no way I can cover everything in one screencast here, or one live stream. I want to start with foundational pieces that if you look for tutorials on OBS, there's a few people that cover it, but not to the degree that I think it needs to be emphasized, where you can really turn your OBS setup into something really personal, make you really stand out, kind of give your own, it's like your own world you're creating here. And that's the thing I love about this content, is that it is like a way for me to be a pseudo artist, even though I can't draw a stick figure worth anything, but I can kind of mold some certain things together and give my content a bit of personality and, you know, engage with all of you. Like, I've met so many new people as I've started this out, so it's been tons of fun. Now comes the part where I've done this a couple times, hasn't blown up yet, but we'll give this a shot. So this is OBS, but one thing to notice is that it looks pretty empty. I'm actually running two versions or two instances of OBS right now, which was an interesting thing to figure out. But one advantage of Linux is I was able to do this much easier than I might have on other operating systems, because I'm not just using OBS kind of the way it comes. If you are on Linux, I'll go back here briefly. That aforementioned Martin has created what's called a snap package, which is a way for you to install a piece of software on any Linux distribution with just a simple command. They call it snaps here. It's kind of like in Windows you would download an exe and just run it. It's kind of like that, but what Martin has done with this, what you call a snap of OBS, is he has also included a boatload of plugins. Now, plugins are to OBS, kind of like R packages are to R, where you can extend the functionality in ways that can take it to a whole different level. And so Martin has personally invested his time in development in terms of making sure these plugins that he uses in his streams work well for people like me that are trying to learn and hence have been trying things out. So I'm able to use these right away. Now, with that said, plugins aren't difficult to install. You just have to hunt for them and find them. But this is kind of like, imagine if you had a download of R that already came with like your favorite packages, like Tidyverse, right out of the box. This is kind of like what Martin's done here with this OBS on Linux, a snap package, I should say. So I'm excited to use that. So that's what I'm using tonight. But again, it is cross-platform, so you can use it on any platform you like. So we're back to kind of the blank canvas here. Let me know if the chat is kind of blocking too much. I always like to have the chat on the screen when I do this, but I'm happy to minimize it. So Afton, to answer your question, finally, welcome. Glad you can make it, and I hope you're feeling better. That snap package I was just showing is a Linux only thing, but OBS of course is cross-platform. You would just have to install the various plugins that Martin has kind of assembled in that bundle already for you. You would just have to install them separately. But again, it's just one of those things that helped me jump up a little further. But the stuff we're going to talk about tonight doesn't deal with plugins that are outside of OBS, because we're going to do what I call the foundations tonight, and the next tutorials will start to spice things up quite a bit. But I want to kind of take this as if I was starting fresh with something, with kind of this knowledge I have now about ways of giving yourself a smoother on-ramp to OBS nirvana, you might say. Now, everything in OBS is governed by two kind of buckets here: scenes and sources. Now, I'm going to give a lot of connections to R here as I do this, because that's kind of helped me figure out the best way of articulating a lot of this. Scenes are like the list object in R. Now that's going to be important, but of course, what can a list object in R have? It can have a collection of character things, numeric things, factors, booleans, all sorts of stuff, data frames inside, and you can chuck it all in a list. sources are kind of like the individual vector elements in R. What I mean by that is you might have a specific type of object. In R, again, going back to vectors, you might have a all numeric, an all character, a Boolean, but they each have their own specific attributes. OBS is very much like that with sources, and sources have many, many different types of sources. We will cover a couple of them tonight that are going to be probably your most important ones for getting set up, at least somewhat smoothly, but there's just a ton that it offers, and that flexibility can be a little intimidating at first. But once you get the hang of it, it's just going to kind of start flowing, and you'll be starting to build some pretty interesting and intricate setups of this. So you must have at least one scene when you do OBS. Like, you've got to have at least something. And of course, this one has nothing in it. Now, one thing you may have noticed if you have used OBS before that you're not seeing here is you're not seeing any of my audio stuff in this default layout. Why is that? Well, I've actually, per recommendations from Martin and a few others, when you go to your settings in OBS, there's a lot here, but we're just going to talk to audio for a second. They have a section called Global Audio Sources, and this is where you can have, by default, I believe it will have desktop audio and your mic or auxiliary audio enabled, where you could show those in the mixer. In fact, I'll just put them at default right now just to show you them. And you see now they do show up here. Now, they're not going to do anything here because this OBS is not going out to Twitch. My other OBS is, which, let's have some fun with Inception here. That's what this whole abomination looks like. Which, we've got a lot to cover before we figure out how we built all of that, but I got a lot going on in the main rig here. Now, you can get pretty far with that. Obsession, yes, Afton, she always comes through with the catchphrases here. I'm gonna give you my first kind of radical take, if you will, of OBS Setup. I recommend you disable all your global audio sources. Now, you may be asking, why would you do that? This will let you be selective on which audio goes in which scene. This can be really important if you have a scene where you don't want your voice heard for some reason. Then you don't have to toggle the mute button all the time as you toggle from one scene to another in that mixer area. You can just go to the scene and it will take care of that for you. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. We're going to set up a whole bunch of scenes as we go through this kind of journey. And some of those scenes are strictly for audio sources. This is the flexibility that OBS offers for you that, again, it was kind of bewildering at first, but this flexibility has let me do things in my setups for both the live stream and the Shiny Dev series that make me feel like I'm one of those, really professional audio or video producers on TV shows or something. Like a professional broadcaster, even though I'll never be a professional broadcaster. I'll just try to act like one, I guess. Now, the first thing we probably want to do is, of course, on video content, you want to make it personal, and you want to show yourself in the content. This is probably the first thing people do with OBS. So we're going to first set up our scenes a little bit, even if it's just more like naming things for now. Now, until they fix this in future versions of OBS, I'm going to start showing you how I organize the different scenes in my setup to make it easier for me to navigate and to kind of put them in different compartments. Well, I'm going to rename this default scene here, which is a very generic name of scene. I'm going to show you kind of how I set these things up. I'm going to do a few backticks, and I'm going to call this live stream scenes. Now, this actually will not have anything. The purpose of this is to give myself a little kind of divider to, as I scroll through these, once I get like everything set up, it'll give me kind of a nice, like, I don't know, what do you want to call it, like a visual separator, so that I don't get lost in all the names of these. And then the next scene I'm going to do is we're going to start setting up. I'm going to call these like my main scenes, the big stuff here. And so the first one I want to do is I'm going to start using some prefixes that kind of keep things straight. And I'm going to use this prefix, a bracket with an asterisk inside, that kind of draw my attention that this is what I'm going to call a major scene for my setup. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it camera scene. Now again, nothing in here yet. We're just kind of setting this up, but I'm being deliberate for a reason here. Now, these main scenes are actually not going to have any sources in the traditional sense. But I think this will make more sense as I set this up a bit more. I'm going to start now setting up another kind of group here. I'm going to again do my 3 tacks here, or dashes. I'm going to call these blocks. You can think of this as like we're building a Lego set or something. We're going to have some individual blocks, and we put them together, make something cool. I have a boatload of Legos upstairs, so this is always fresh in my mind, and they're all over the floor right now because kids, you know. But now we're going to start putting the building blocks for what I'm calling this camera scene. And so the way I'm going to organize this is I'm going to add another scene, but now I'm going to change the prefix that I do here to with a capital B, because this is going to be what I call a block. Now I'm going to call this full camera. Now in here, now we're going to get to sources finally. But what we're doing now is we're setting up the stage for scenes to actually be sources in other scenes. And now I'm going to bring this back to R for a second. That list object that I told you about, the very, very powerful list object, guess what it can have inside it? It can have other lists inside. This is going to seem like a lot at first, but you'll thank future you will thank you later if you want to take the time to invest in this. But let's make this tangible. Let's put some sources in this full camera. So now, as you see, I have these 2 sections here. We have scenes, and we're going to hit the plus sign under the sources thing where it says, of course, we don't have any right now. And so this is what I was talking about. These types of sources in OBS are a lot. And you probably will never use all of them. I certainly don't. But of course, what we want to do now is what's called a video capture device. This may be called something different on different operating systems, but I believe it'll still be called video capture device. And so you hit that, you select that, and it'll let you rename this if you want. Now this is where I'm going to do that prefix stuff again, because it's always helpful to kind of, as you're going to have multiple sources, to kind of distinguish this from what you do from your scene perspective. So the prefix I like to use for these is local, meaning that it is a very specific type of thing that's only used within certain scenes. So I'll just call this webcam. And then now it's going to ask me, and guess what? There I am. You can kind of see my ugly room a little bit back there. Now, I wasted a lot of time earlier this week trying to figure out how I could use my camera, my real camera. I mean the DLSR one that I use for my headshot on the lower right twice in OBS, and that did not fly well. So now you're stuck with, on the demo, using my Logitech webcam. So I literally have the two side by side above my monitor. So that's why it looks a little different. So, but that's good enough for now. You just have to select it in your device menu, and I'm not going to dare select the other one because that will probably cause chaos. Maybe evil chaos, as someone might say. And then resolution, you can choose different resolutions. Now this gets to kind of hardware stuff. Some cameras don't support very good resolutions, but certainly you feel free to play with these a little bit. I'm good enough with this for now because I'm going to actually do some modifications. In fact, I'll just keep the rest of this here, but you can see you can do a whole bunch of things with brightness, contrast. In fact, we can experiment with this a little bit, make the brightness a little dimmer. Yeah, that's a little better. Maybe too dark though. This, you may not want to play with these too much because you're going to have a different filter that we're going to do to dial this down kind of another notch, but that's good enough. Now, you can see that it didn't take the full resolution of what OBS thinks. Yeah, gotta love the new pipe symbol. Yeah, this yeah, it does look kind of freaky when I look at this. But it, you know, I should be used to it by now. Welcome, Coder Cow. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining. We're gonna stretch this out.
Thank you for the follow, Theory Electual Toilet.
Well, I love the handle, but thank you for the follow. That's awesome. Yeah, R Studio Conf. Yep, rocking that. I have quite a bit of R Studio swag, by the way. It's I have like a whole section of my closet literally just of the R Studio shirts. So you notice I actually did stretch this out a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is another cool trick. You won't be able to see it visually other than what I tell you. You'll see it, but it won't be obvious how I do it until you listen. But you can probably guess I don't want you to see my ugly back half of behind the green screen here. Well, in OBS, you notice you get these boxes around the frame. This is where, just like in other programs, you can resize stuff. Well, you can also crop in OBS, but I didn't really find out about this until Martin and others told me. If you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard when the arrows turn to like the little side-by-side ones, you can crop it. Now, I'm going to crop it so that you only see me with the green screen. That looks pretty good. And so now we didn't lose like the resolution. All we did is we simply cropped it a bit. And then we can even move this a little bit now with our mouse to make it a little more center. That's looking better. So that's one of those tips that, again, I don't see them very much often in tutorials, but that's an easy way to crop your visual of whatever you're bringing in, is holding the Alt key and hitting your mouse with the arrows going into the resize up or down or left and right. So this is pretty good. I did what I wanted to do. It's got me, it's got the green screen. And this is helpful because there may be cases where when I do a stream or I want to send this out to another program, I don't necessarily want to show the green screen. I might put it down just if my room is cleaner. Maybe they want to see my backdrop, or I could be like at R Studio Conf earlier this year where all the presenters seem to have really cool plants in their background. Maybe I'll get a plant to shove back there. But now the scene is set up for either way. Now, this is cool. I think we're in good shape here. But, of course, if you've been in the world of streaming before, you probably know what a green screen is for. A green screen is for actually being able to remove your background entirely and then put whatever you want in there. Now, the way we do that is going to be through a functionality called filters. But here comes the first kind of radical idea of where this whole organization is going to start to pay off. Now, I like this scene and I want to use it for the cropping of the green screen, but I still want to be able to toggle back and forth between not having the background destroyed or removed and having the background be able to be removed. Now, the easy way to do this is we're going to take this scene that we have here, the full camera screen or scene, and we're going to duplicate it. And I'm going to call this one, instead of full camera 2, I'm going to call it full camera chroma. Chroma will make sense in just a second here, but these are now two distinct scenes. They just happen to have the same thing inside. But now let's work on removing that green screen effect, and that's where we're going to use what are called filters. Filters are a way for you, if you're familiar with graphic design or things like that, you can manipulate the image, post the image, like it's kind of like putting an effect on top. Now, I'm not a professional photo editor by any means, but I know enough to do little touch-ups and things like that. It's quite similar to that. And so what we want to do now is we have this box here where it says filters for full camera chroma, and we're going to hit the plus sign here, and the one we want to use is called chroma key. And now I tend to not be as picky about the names of filters because they're used not as frequently, so I'm just going to hit OK on this. And look at that. Right off the bat, it removed a pretty good amount. Now you can still see a little it's maybe hard to see on the stream, but there's a little hint of a square there. So we haven't quite dialed this in just yet, but this is looking pretty good. And it defaults, when you use this chroma key, it defaults to green as like the color behind you that you want to remove. And that's why I did a pretty good job already. But I'll show you why I think that square is showing up a little bit. I'll have to drag this out a little bit. You notice how the area around me looks kind of fuzzy, kind of like the old TVs were having fuzz and static. That means the chroma effect didn't quite get it done yet. Now, there's a cool thing we can do to really dial this in a little bit. Now, these sliders here change different aspects of the chroming, and I can't explain all of them in great detail, but I'll show you the ones I use once I get this dialed in more. First, we're going to take down the similarity to 0 or to 1, and now you can see we have the green screen again, as if I didn't have this filter at all. Now, I'll get to that in a little bit after. But first I want to show you the trick here, is that in this key color type drop down, you can do what's called custom. Now it defaults like a pretty sharp neon green here, if you can tell, but it lets you select a color. Now, this is kind of like in web development, you might use this as like a color picker, but guess what? You can also pick a color on your screen. You hit that button, you get the little crosshair here. And now I'm hovering the crosshair over part of the green screen behind me to really dial this in as the one I want to remove. So I'm just going to go ahead and click my mouse here. And then we hit OK. And it, ironically, it almost made it a little worse, but we can... But that's because I had the similarity down so bad. Now if we slide this down a little bit, we're getting there, and I will admit this probably won't be perfect because this webcam is just not very good, but it's getting closer, But this is the part where you just kind of have to play with things a little bit, and depending on your camera quality, you may not get it exactly perfect, but honestly, you can probably get 80%, 90% of the way there. But these are the three sliders I tend to use a bit more often, is the similarity, the smoothness, and the key color split reduction. And again, don't ask me for precise definitions of these. I just know that those are the three that I typically deal with. That looks pretty good to me. Let's close it. And there I am. So I've got the green screen out of this. I toggle back. I have it here. I don't have it here. And the best part is that this scene was untouched. Nothing bad happened to it when I did it on this scene, because they are treated as completely separate objects, or completely, you might say completely separate lists in R, kind of like that. Okay, so I'm going to catch up on questions here. Afton has the very, very important question. Yeah, fluffy hair. Now you can see yours truly doesn't quite have the fluffy hair problem here. Yeah, I don't know how to really handle that, because I'm sure it's like getting kind of confused with what you're trying to remove in your background. I guess you'd have to be a little more creative with it. But yeah, I don't have a real world experience of that one, unfortunately. Now, green screens, I don't know, it's kind of funny. It's definitely a personal thing, personal preference, you might say. I mean, I've seen a lot of great content from all of you out there without green screens. It's kind of cool to see your setup. So, I think for me, I just wanted to have the just in case kind of thing, and I like having kind of a variety in background, so it suits me well. But don't feel obliged to use a green screen if you don't want to. Like, it's your stream, you make it yours. But this is just, if you do have one, OBS makes it super easy, as I just showed you in the last couple minutes, to get to a stage where you might have your own background and do some fun things with it. So yeah, let me make sure I haven't missed anything else. Oh, lighting. Yeah, lighting is important. Actually, that's probably another stream entirely. I've invested a bit of money in my lighting setup. I won't be able to tilt the camera or anything, but I have a pretty big kind of LED camera spotlight thing above the camera, mounted above it. It's kind of a crazy setup. I used to have another light that was to my right on a tripod, and I have fluorescent LED lights in the basement here wall above me. So it's not perfect, but it definitely helps a lot if you can have good lighting, because that will counter a lot of visual artifacts that might happen. So now I want to do one more for the camera, but this time we're going to do our own background for it. But guess what? Wait for it. We're going to do another scene. We're going to duplicate this one. I'm going to call this full camera and background. Now, the only thing we're going to do here is we're not going to change the local source. We're just going to add another source. And I'm going to now do an image source. Image, as you might guess, is going to be a static image file. I'm going to call this wallpaper background. Hit OK. And this one's a very self-explanatory one. We're just going to browse. Look at my massive list of files here. This is the repo that I have for my talk on Friday, which I have not finished yet, of course, because that's how it goes. And look what we have here. I did a little fun the other night. I have put in the mascot of UseR into a background. Well, you know, I had to try something different. But there is one nuance here I want to emphasize here, is that as you add these sources that have to do with like media type content. Now, images is a very static form of media, but this could apply for video files, audio files, and the like. You can save a bit of performance if you're like itching to squeeze out performance during your stream by checking this box of unload image when not showing. What that means is that when you go to a scene that does not have this source inside, it'll kind of remove it from the OBS memory, if you will. And that can help if you're on a system where you're kind of scratching and clawing for as much computer memory as you can get. So that's built in, no custom things needed for that. I just check the box. Now, of course, what do you see here? Or what, more importantly, what don't you see? Wait for it. Well, my handsome face, right? How do we get that back? Well, notice the order here. Whenever you add a source, it goes to the top of the line in the list of sources. And now what you need to do is you simply need to reorder it. Now, I've had bad luck actually dragging these with my mouse, but there are these little up and down arrows, or you just hit the down arrow. Now, there I am. Now, what's interesting here is that's a black background. That should not happen, right? Let's take a look here. Check the filters for a second. I'm a little suspicious here. Oh, I bet I know. Let's copy filters. This may have been a nuance of my my strategy here. In fact, this strategy may actually have backfired on me. Yeah. You know why it backfired? Because I actually don't want this local webcam as the scene here. This is good. This is what happens. A lot of these things are trial and error. What I want, of course, is that background to be not blocked by an artificial black barrier here, or square here. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to take out this local scene. I'm just going to remove it. And we should be back to this. And now what I want to add, now this is the part where Inception kind of happens a little bit. We're adding a scene as a source in a scene. Ooh. And voila, there I am. No background hidden. Now, isn't that already starts to pay off quite a bit? Is that we can use this block of full camera chroma scene as sources in other scenes. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but this does not get talked about a lot when you look at the average OBS tutorial for most people that do gaming content. Now, that's a good catch, Afton. The reason there's a delay here is because the webcam versus my real camera have a huge difference in quality. And so it's going to lag a little bit, the webcam that what you're seeing in the center has, versus my lower right. That's on my obscenely expensive Sony Alpha A6400 that I bought as a treat last Christmas. That is top of the line stuff. I don't know if I should feel guilty or not making that purchase, but I like it. But good. Now what we have here is we have these blocks here where we have the full camera, again with the green screen, although we have that black thing around. That's just because of the webcam itself. The same would have just no background at all, and then with the background. Now, guess where you think I'm going to put this block in? Well, right here, of course. We're going to put that as a source to this overall scene. And we are going to put that right here. Voila. So that now we have simply as the first source of this the full camera background. This is pretty good. This is exactly the kind of thing I do for my actual stream setup, where I like to start kind of like the full view, and then I bring in the chat, and then we get to the programming bits, which we're gonna touch on now here. But we've set up 3 building blocks already, which will be used in different places. But for the camera scene, that is kind of like my main one to start with, I've got it inside this camera scene. So let's now talk about showing your actual R development stuff. Maybe R Studio, or what you're about to see, is because of both interesting and some esoteric reasons. I'm actually going to show you Visual Studio Code as my programming scene and how I set that up. And Waylon Walker, thanks for joining. He has a great observation here. Doing this setup where you have these like self-contained blocks of scenes that have their own sources inside, it's much easier to debug versus if you just like duplicated a camera source across a whole bunch of scenes, and then you found up you change one little thing, then you have to change it in every single part that you did that in. Now, there's only one place you have to change it, and it'll make things a lot easier. But let's do the same kind of setup here, where we're going to do what I'll call you might say a demonstration scene of like programming. So what do? We first make a new scene. We're going to first do the container for it, if you will. I'm going to call it demo scene. Now, of course, for scenes, when it adds them, it puts them at the back of the line, if you will. We're going to move that up here. So we've got camera scene and demo scene. And of course, nothing's in it yet. Bit of hydrate time. I haven't figured out all the channel points stuff. That's like for later. Some of you on here know that way better than me. I gotta learn from all of you. Okay, so I'll tell you what I want to put in here, and then we'll start kind of building this first. What I want is that I have my Visual Studio Code window, and then I have myself on the lower right, much like what you're seeing now on the actual stream. I have no idea what I'm going to call my channel points yet. But it's got to have something to do with gaming or sports. Those are kind of my 2 things I like to do in my spare time when I'm not doing this stuff. Maybe something to do with Mega Man. I don't know. Or R, of course. Yeah. So we're going to need some blocks again, because I want to, excuse me, make it so that if I make tweaks to sources of like my programming environment, that there's only one place I have to change that in. So we're going to do another scene here. Excuse me. I'm going to call it programming scene. Now, no, hydrate again. Okay. Oh, shinies. That would be good. Now, there's a couple ways we can do captures of either programs or your whole computer in OBS. You can do what's called a screen capture, which will let you capture your monitor. We'll demonstrate that here just to show you. And that's real Inception. That's actually getting my main monitor, which is actually 4K, by the way. And when I actually do OK on that, it's only going to get like the upper left of it. Why is it the upper left? because in OBS I'm using a base resolution of 1080p or 1920 by 1080, which a lot of people recommend for streaming. They actually don't recommend streaming in 4K because it uses up a lot more bandwidth going out to the streaming platforms like Twitch and YouTube. So what I have in my setup is actually I have two monitors. I have the 4K one directly in front of me, and I have an older monitor which is up to 1080p on the left. So this isn't what I want to do for here, so I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this. Let me remove it. I want to do a slightly different thing. I want to do a window capture. That is right here near the bottom. Click that. I'm going to rename this because that's a pretty cryptic name, isn't it? Excuse me. Call this VS Code source. And I'm coming to that local prefix again in case I need to go into these in the future. And then now it's going to give you a choice of windows. Now this is where little story time of Eric and his technical mishaps when he first started this. Some reason on my Linux environment, my desktop environment that I'm using, which is called GNOME or Pop OS is a variant of GNOME, which those who were watching Slice last night is also used by Kyle, by the way. So there's at least one Slice contestant that uses Linux, which is kind of cool. But anyway, this environment doesn't let me see all the windows that I actually have on the screen, except for a couple of them. And we're going to go to Visual Studio Code, and there it is. I'm going to hit OK now, and there it is. That's VS Code, just like what I have on my main monitor. I actually have a script where I'm, get this for meta, folks, I'm analyzing an export of my OBS scenes. It's a JSON file. So guess what? R can import JSON just fine. So I'm gonna. That's kind of cool to be able to do that. Okay, so that's pretty good. We got our programming scene, the block of it, I should say. And now I want to be able to superimpose my actual video myself on the lower right, so that you can kind of see my of course me talking while I do code.
Nickman_Datasky rated my stream with 32 views.
Oh, hello. Well, thank you, Nick, as always, for the raid. That is much appreciated.
Thank you for the follow, Craig.
Oh, Craig, welcome. Thanks for joining. We are doing kind of a meta stream tonight. We are going over my foundations.
Thank you for the follow, Gregory.
Oh, thank you, Gregory UT, or Gregory. We're going over my building blocks for my OBS setup for streaming. So it's quite it's quite meta tonight, but it's got some art stuff in it though. So thank you for the follows, everybody.
Thank you for the follow, Giovanio.
Yeah, never gets old, does it? So what I want to do is I want to put this programming scene in the demo scene.
Champions 2004.
Nice. So we're going to do the same thing we did before, is we're going to add it as a source in this meta scene. Thank you, Isomorph, for the follow. Much appreciated. I'm going to put scene here.
Thank you for
and
the
I want to put my programming scene here. So thank you, Data Dude. Thank you so much for joining. And so now,
thank you for the follow,
the demo scene now has the programming scene. And now what I want to do is I want to get that video of myself in the lower right. Well, it's going to sound like a broken record, but guess what? We're going to put another scene as a source in this scene. And this time, notice the one I'm going to choose here. Am I going to choose full camera? Maybe. Am I going to choose full camera background? No. I'm going to choose full camera chroma because I don't want the background to hide the actual code window. And now I want to be able to resize this so that it goes into the lower right without me, literally blocking the words here. So making sure that this is on top, we're just going to resize it. 5, down, down, down. Maybe like that. So the chat, it's kind of hiding it. So I'm going to hide the chat for a little bit. Bear with me for a second. There we go. Not bad, right? That's pretty good. So yes, observation from is that Noralixic? Yes, I have yeah. Somebody who knows Final Fantasy should know that's Mog. That's my it's my what do you call this? The stream train or follow train. Every time I get a follow, that Mog starts to navigate the little waddle to the R logo. That was all with stream elements, everybody. Stream elements for the win. So, what we've done here is that we simply have a demo scene that has 2 scenes inside it, the programming scene and my video scene. And now, the nice thing is I can toggle between the two, going from my full camera view to the demo. So we have technically created 6 scenes just for these 2 paradigms. These are kind of like the basics, if you will. We definitely haven't done everything yet because there's another type of browser source that you can have a lot of fun with. That as of OBS version 26 is now a native functionality where it, it used to be a plugin that you had to download, but now you don't have to. And it's actually appropriate that we were talking about that little stream element stuff at the top, because the fun things you can do is have web type sources from any ordinary web page or even the more customized stuff. This is where things start to get really fun. Now I'm going to have a little fun with this because I'm about to try something I haven't actually put as a source yet. Now, I learned about today when I was in the tutorial. I was in 2 of the tutorials for the Use-R conference today. One of them was using R Markdown to actually create packages, which is really cool. The other one was upping your game with sharing and slides. That was mind-blowing. I learned so many cool things, which will be quite handy for my presentation on Friday. But in any event, there was a utility that one of the people at ThinkR that I have collaborated with quite a bit, Colin Fay, had made online to keep track of time. It was like a timer, but it was made entirely in JavaScript and Node. I mean, it's just an ordinary web page. So I'm going to go ahead and find that. So I'm going to switch to the browser for a second, and I have I use a service called Pinboard to keep track of my bookmarks. That could be talked about sometime. But he made Colin made this very basic timer page with JavaScript, and we'll just show what it looks like in here first. It's just simply a web link with a query parameter of a number. And there you go. Big deal, a timer, right? How about we throw this in OBS, huh? So let's give this a shot. So we are going to copy this link, keep it handy here. And we're going to go back to OBS here. And maybe for whatever reason, we want this as part of our demonstration scene for programming. Who knows why? I mean, I don't know. But let's first make a block for it. So again, we're going to do a new scene here. We're going to use the prefix of B to distinguish it from the main scenes up there. I'm going to call it timer scene. And again, nothing in it, of course. Every time you make a scene, it's got nothing in it. Yeah, so I want to answer Craig's question first. So you can host a static web page that you can interact with yourself or running locally. You bet you can. In fact, our I know you weren't here at the beginning, but the person I've learned from the most, Martin Wimpress, for our Hotshot Racing virtual racing league streams that he would orchestrate and I would just connect in. He used one of my Shiny apps as a browser source in OBS, which was awesome. The random car picker, and then I don't think he showed the dashboard one, but yeah, that was awesome stuff. But we're gonna do a simple today. We're just gonna do the timer web app. Now the source you want to do is called browser, and so we're gonna call this local again. I'm gonna call it timer web page, and then now you get what looks like nothing happening here. Although it's got this kind of nice splash screen, it kind of tells you what you can do with this. I know it probably can't read it here, but it says that you display a web page from the internet or a local file that are used for widgets and alerts or anything you like. So what we want to do is we want to paste in the URL that we just copied from the ThinkR site. And let's experiment. And the width is always like 800 by 600 by default, but we're just going to make it match our canvas resolution, 1920 by 1080. And the frame rate stuff, I just like to bump it up to 60 because I'm a 60 frames per second person. I don't know why. If your browser source had any audio associated with it, which actually is very handy with that Stream Elements stuff, you can check this box of control audio via OBS, where then you'll get another audio element in your mixer that's tailored to that particular source. The music you're listening to right now is actually a browser source on my main OBS setup. It's not from a media file. It's actually from a browser source, and I control it, the audio through OBS, so I can raise and lower the volume, mute it when I need to. So you get a lot of flexibility by that option. Now, I have no idea if this is going to work. Let's give it a shot. And it clearly did not. We can try one more time. There are some different things you can do. Now, this is where things get a little tricky. You can do custom CSS. You can see it actually is showing. Oh, I know why. Look at the font. It's black, right? Now, what can we do to change that? This is actually kind of good. Let's figure out, okay, well, if the font is black and our background is black, what can we do about that? Well, guess what? We can add another source here. We can do an image. Actually, no, I'm not sure if it's an image. We're about to find. Oh, it's actually a color source. That's what I was looking for. And I'm not going to rename this one. It's just trivial. Well, we just want white. That's close to white. We'll just hit OK to that. Move it down. And there it is. There's our JavaScript timer. So Tanho has a good point. You could also, if you're proficient with CSS, you could go back to your browser source and go into this custom CSS area. And if you know your CSS, you could easily do custom stuff here. I'm actually still a pretty big novice of CSS in terms of like manipulating here, but I do know some widgets where they have you paste in CSS into this field to make it look a little different, especially with those chat overlays that you often see. But yeah, you could definitely do that in this custom CSS widget here. But that's cool. Now we got a timer scene here. And then what we could do here is we could add this back in the demo scene. Again, scenes for your scenes for your scenes, everybody. I know you're going to get tired of that after a while, but it has changed my OBS life. And now you can see that hogged the whole size, but if we resize that. But I do want to caution you one thing, is you start adding these different things in your sources pane, it can be easy to mistakenly move something or mistakenly resize something. And you're like, oh gosh, oh no, how did I have it before? One way to prevent that is if you have your scenes kind of dialed in, or the sources dialed in into the position you want, there's these little lock buttons. If you hit those, now they're immune to any accidental changes here. That means that now I'm guaranteed that when I hit this little, drag this around, I'm not going to accidentally drag these around. So that's a handy little trick. Use those the lock toggles to make sure that you can keep everything else intact. Now the other thing you can do, after I'm done moving this around a bit, is you can, of course, selectively hide and show sources in your scene. Now hitting a little eye icon here, and now you see that the timer's not there, but the placeholder is still there. You can kind of see the red border around it. We just hit it. We hit it, but then we can unhide it. And there we go. We've got you know, a trivial timer here, but adding a browser source, other than that little quirk we have with the font color, is literally that easy. And that is the fundamental concept that platforms like Streamlabs and Stream Elements use to give you that kind of extra little flavor you can put on your streams for alerts, for other, you know, notifications. The browser source is the magic that makes that happen. So it is easily, of all the different source types I use in OBS, that's probably the second or third favorite of the whole bunch, other than, of course, the whole nesting of scenes within scenes is kind of my other favorite trick right now. So that's pretty good. We got our camera scene, we got our demo scene that kind of got blinged up a little bit. So one thing that can kind of give your stream or video content a little more polish is the default settings for transitions. When transitions means, I'll bring in the chat here again. There we go. Transitions means when you navigate from one scene to another. In default in OBS, it's just the fade. It's kind of fades in and out like that. Now, what I want to show you now is the way that you can customize transitions. Now, I notice my dock here is a little hiding some stuff. I'm going to take away the stats dock here. Yeah, that's another cool thing, is that you can have different docks in OBS, which is kind of like different panels, and you can see there's one called Scenes Transition right here. And now we got that over on this side. Let me make that a little easier to see. And you can see where it says fade. Now you can do different types of transitions. You can do a cut, or adding some what we call shaders or moves or swipes and all that stuff. In fact, let's try swipe and see what happens. I'm not sure if this will work. When you add a swipe, when you add a transition, you can name it. I'm going to hit OK here. And it lets you preview it on the fly. So you can hit preview and it'll kind of go from A to B, A to B. Good enough. Let's hit OK. And let's see what happens when we go here. Boom. Out and out. Out and out. So again, another kind of little thing that can add up after a bit is just having these transitions to kind of break the break the default mold, if you will. So I do use transitions, but I've actually started using transitions that depend on what scene I'm coming from and going to. And that can be really handy in certain situations where you kind of want to give it a little extra, customization if you're going from like your full view to like a programming view or things like that. So again, it's just these things are built into OBS, the whole transition thing. Afton, great question. She's asking, is there any way to put something on your transition, like an image that zooms in and then out, retro cartoon style? So yes, what you're referring to are stinger transitions. This is kind of like its own meta topic in the streaming world. Stingers are kind of these nice little cool widgets that you can have that take over the screen for like, they take over the screen initially, and then when they remove, it shows you the thing that you want to show. So it's kind of like I mean, you probably see it on TV or other, things a lot. You see a very creative, like, big graphic come in and out. Heck, even the old Batman cartoons, they would have like the Batman logo zoom in and out like that. So you can definitely do that. And the way you do that is you can add what's called a stinger. In fact, why not? Let's try it here. I do have some stingers that I have found online or purchased online. It's amazing. There is just a whole different world when you start diving into like all these like custom assets you can bring to your stream. I almost got completely lost looking at resources. There's one called Nerd or Die or something, and other ones that even Stream Elements kind of links to some of them for free. There's just a whole bunch of stuff out there, but I do have some, and we can try programming in here. So let's do add stinger. I'll keep the name as default. And then it'll ask you for the video file. So you have to either make this yourself or find it. And I have absolutely no skills on making stingers. I just found them online and hope for the best. So I'm going to start searching for that here. Whoops, that was odd. I might have an issue here with this, unfortunately. Oh, okay, now we got it. OBS files. Oh boy, let me think where I have it. There's one site called Digital Park. Oh, Stinger transitions. Okay. What color should we choose? Any preference on colors? We got orange, pink, purple, red. Going once, going twice. Whoever says something first gets the first dibs. All right, I'm gonna pick then. Let's do purple. Ah, read your mind, Napton. Purple it is. So now the transition point type, this is a way for you to define kind of how long it takes to fade in, or for the stinger to last, if you will. So I think we can do time. We're just gonna kind of see if this works though. Some stingers have audio, and you can configure that here too. Let's preview this. Oh, nice. By default, it seems to work pretty well. Okay, so let's see. So all I did is I browsed to the right file, and usually they're WebM files because WebM is slightly less resource intensive than like MP4s, but it could be any video file, and it's not very long, so it's not a huge deal. I think this transition point is if you had to like really customize how long it takes, you could do that. I have no idea what track mat means here. That's new to OBS 27. So I'm just gonna leave everything as default. And so let's see what happens when we put this in action. Let's go to demo scene. I think I know what that stuff was that I didn't tweak yet. If you're watching closely, look what happens when I hit it. You can see the new scene pretty quickly during that point. So we're gonna change that up a little bit. So let's hit the gear next to singer transition. And I think this is where we need to kind of guess how long it takes for that initial view of the stinger to go in. And I think this is in milliseconds, so let's try 400 milliseconds. See if that did better. Yes, it did. You notice there that before the arrows came in, it didn't show the new scene when I switched. We'll do that one more time, just in case you didn't see it. So during that move, you didn't see my new scene show up yet. So nice. And Jesse comes in with the art knowledge here. Track mats are used to do reveals, carve out shapes, etc. Okay, good to know. I heard a lot of people are excited about that. Oh, thank you for the follow, Manzanitos. Thank you so much. Oh, After Effects. Yeah, I've never dove into that world. I do a little bit with what's called the GIMP editor in Linux. It's also cross-platform, but it just goes way over my head.
Thank you for the follow, oofty_42.
Oh, my alerts seem to be lagging a little bit, but they're there. Thank you for the follows, everybody. So we've covered some cool things here. We've covered the camera scene, the demo scene, but we haven't covered an important part yet. Is of course, how can anybody actually hear me? Because in this setup, if I was streaming this actual setup, you'd hear a whole lot of nothing. So what do we do for audio? So I teased it earlier. Everything I do in OBS is probably a scene. So guess what? We're going to add a new category of scenes here. Then a little plus here. I'm going to call it audio. I'm treating audio separately. Oh, that's funny. Did you notice that? It even transitioned the stinger transition to this new scene. Oh, that's crazy. There are ways. There's a plugin that comes with this OBS kind of bundle I use, where you can selectively choose which transitions to use to which scene. So I just too lazy to customize it now. But okay, we've got the placeholder for it. Let's start adding a building block here. I'm going to give us a prefix of A for audio. We'll call it microphone. Ha! Still did this little transition there. Okay, so now we need to add a source finally. And this time, audio. Now for me, I get two of them because in Linux there are actually two sound systems. One called ALSA, one called Pulse Audio. But if you're using this on Windows or Mac, you might only get one, which is fine. You just need something to capture or input. I believe I want input capture. So we'll just stick with the name of that for now. And then now it's going to let you choose the default. And here, oh, actually, guess what I'm wearing here? I actually don't use the mic on my headset. I have a different mic that's mounted above. But for this, I could actually use it. And this is where things could get crazy here. Do I do it? Well, why not? I'm not actually streaming this part out, so we'll see. So this will use my headset audio. By the way, if my audio completely cuts out after doing this, please tell me in the chat, because this is starting to get to like that using OBS twice and there be dragons kind of thing. Well, let's hit OK on this. And now what you see here is that the meter is moving when I talk. So this is your input, audio input capture. And you can selectively cap the volume level. Right now it's at 100%, but you could bump it down like 6 decibels or whatever. And then in terms of like where you want this to be, everybody tells me, and I have no reason to disagree, you kind of want the audio to be near the top of the green and slightly into the yellow probably. But for most people, yeah, the default should last fine. Now, you can have, of course, lots of different audio sources. But if I was doing this for real, I would have this scene here inside my other scenes. So guess what? I have scenes for your scenes and all your scenes, and we're going to add another source to this camera scene, and it's going to be, wait for it, a scene of the microphone. And now that same mixer shows up here. Now again, if I had to make any odd tweaks to this specific microphone source, I only have to do it in one place, and I just add it wherever I want the audio to be. We would do the same thing in the demo scene. Yes, I have more scenes for your scenes. Microphone here, and now we got it. I'll just move this down because I don't want it to be at the top, but it doesn't really matter in this case, but now I've got the audio in here. Now, one thing that you may need to watch out for is, what I like to do is when I do streams like I'm doing right now, I actually both stream it to Twitch or YouTube. Right now it's Twitch. And I record it locally. Because I'll put the local recording I make, which is pretty top of the line stuff with the settings I have, I post that to my YouTube channel the day after to kind of give me that nice on-demand version, because the Twitch videos do expire after a certain point. And actually for me, this may not be for some of you online here, I started with YouTube. Because all the Shiny Dev Series content has been on YouTube. We did the webinar stuff that we would post to YouTube afterwards. All my interviews are on there, and I even did the first live streams on there until all of you hooked me into Twitch, and now I'm doing Twitch. So anyway, what I do is I'll take the local recording. I might do some editing of it locally, like on my beefy machine here, or I just might keep it as is. And I simply upload it to YouTube and fill the show notes and all that good stuff. And then when I send a tweet out the day after, I'll link to the YouTube version at that point. That'll be kind of like my VOD resting place for most of that. So Afton has a good question here. Is it higher quality if we record it locally versus just saving it down to Twitch after streaming? It kind of depends on what you do in your OBS settings for recording, but for me, yes, it is a higher quality. And plus, it's just nice to have that flexibility of, like, it was produced entirely locally instead of like going to the streaming service and have to take it back from the streaming service. It just makes things easier for me to do that. To have a local copy, I can do whatever I want with it. I actually have plans on exploring other streaming platforms that are out there that are kind of more of the open source variety. One's called PeerTube, and another one I heard about, I think ironically, while watching somebody else's stream called DTube. I'll have to take a look at that sometime. But in any event, the thing to watch out for when you do local recordings is making sure that both your stream going out and your local recording actually have the audio that you're capturing via the microphone or whatever other sources you have. Now the way you do that is you hit this little gear here and you go to advanced audio properties. It's not just the properties, you go to the advanced ones. And this is where you see it's got my names. It'll have the names of all your audio sources, even if they're not on that specific scene. You'll have it as active here. The key to watch out for is that it's kind of easy to miss, is that there's a scroll bar here. And look at the tracks thing. What I understand is that when you're streaming to Twitch or YouTube or whatever streaming platform you have, you want to make sure all of your audio sources at least are on track 1. Because when you stream out, all the sources, I should say, the only track that goes out to like Twitch or YouTube is only one track. And you can select in the options which track it is, but you want to make sure that you check that for each source that you have. In fact, what we'll do now is just to illustrate this, we'll add another audio source here. I will do what I'll call a media source, even though it won't be anything fancy here. We'll do music for that. That transition again. This is a good time to talk about media sources, even though it's supposed to be for audio. We'll just have fun with it. So for media sources, you get the media source type of this designation. You can do that. And if it's specifically video and you want to use VLC, which is a video playing program, to drive that, you can specifically choose VLC video source. You don't have to, but that's available to you. We'll just do media source for now. And then this is where you can browse to the file you want to play. And I should have some videos here somewhere. Although I have audio assets. Got my Tron sound bites. My processed version is faster. You can loop them if you want. You can restart the playback when that source becomes active. But the other important thing, like I told you before, any media content, check that close file when inactive box. You can change the speed of it too. But there we go. Now, of course, you didn't hear that, but it played that soundbite for a couple seconds there. But now, just for demonstration purposes, we're going to add that that scene into here. So scene, music, and then it played it again, and then it went out. But now I want to show you that advanced audio setting again. So now we have two audio things, and by default, OBS will check the box next to all tracks. But if you're a real audio kind of, let's say wizard, or you want to do some custom audio stuff with your recordings, you can actually keep them as separate tracks in addition to like the tracks that you do for streaming. So in this case, what I'm doing here is I'm saying that for streaming, they're going to go to track 1, but in my recording, they will go to track 1, but then the mic source will go to track 2 only, and the music source will go to track 3 only. Now, why is that important? If you want to do editing with polishing your audio afterwards, and you want to do it separately for the different sources, you make them separate tracks, because some video editing software will recognize certain video formats where you had audio sources as different tracks, and it'll let you see the different tracks separately, much like you're seeing them here kind of with the sources, but it'll do the same thing with the tracks. And in that way, maybe in your recording you notice that your voice audio is a little low or maybe a little high. Then in your VOD that you want to put up to like YouTube or somewhere else later, you could get your video editing software, you could take that track, you could like amplify it, you could minimize it a little bit, re-encode it, and then bring that up to the VOD platform you want to use, and then you can kind of clean it up. So it gives you a little safeguard to clean up your audio after the initial live recording. Now for me, if I could tell you how many hours I spent on this OBS setup, it'll probably make your head spin. So I've tried to make it so I don't have to do that, but I have the flexibility just in case I do screw something up. And it turns out my latest Shiny Dev Series episode, my right-hand person for that project, Curtis Kephart from our studio, thought my audio was louder than the guest that I had. And I was like, oh, I thought I fixed that. So that recording will give me flexibility in the future to fix that a bit. So, but that's about as much as you need to know about audio to start with. But the key part here is to take advantage of the audio mixer. And again, just like with the other sources visually, you can mute them by hitting the speaker button, unmute them by getting it back. And like I said, you can tweak the volume accordingly. So I can make that really small, and you can see the meter's not even moving, but when I bump it up, then you start to see it more. So you can do lots of cool things here in this setup. So what have we done here? We've got, not counting these like organizational kind of headings, you have 2, 5, and 2. So we have, if my math is correct, we have 11 scenes, all in this live stream. That's not bad. That's actually pretty far. I didn't think I'd get that far, but we covered a lot of cool things here. We've covered just getting your camera and the building blocks you can do to do different camera things. We covered showing some cool programming, type development window. This time we did the window capture, but you could easily do your desktop capture as well. We've added both my video in the lower right, which again was a scene that came in here from the sources pane, and we resized that accordingly. I have locked this, so no matter how many times in fact, I lock everything, no matter what I click on here, nothing's moving. But of course, if I unlock it, then I can move this myself around, whee, and do all that fun stuff. And there we snapped it back. We had fun with a browser source. It was just a random timer, but the idea is generalized to almost any type of browser source you can think of. But it's more about not just what we built, it's how I've set this up, because this gets, I mean, in the end, it's up to you how complex you want to make it. For my Shiny Dev series stuff, and also for my live streams, I actually have 2 separate profiles in OBS. But not so much profiles, that's the wrong choice of words. It's actually a scene collection, where what you can do is you can have different collections for different purposes. So maybe this collection we're building here is like my tutorial for live streaming. But then what if I want to do another collection that's just like for me talking to guests remotely, and it's not really meant to be streamed live, but it's meant for me to record with my computer in OBS, do the editing, post it to YouTube or whatever, and that becomes my product. I might call that scene collection like interviews or something. That'll be something we get to next time, is how you can do that further organization and be able to toggle between these different collections by simply clicking their names in a menu here. That way you don't have to feel like you only have one OBS kind of canvas here. You can have multiple canvases and just toggle between the two depending on how deep you want to go with this. And as you can tell, I've gone pretty deep with this, and I feel like I'm at the point of no return, where yes, there are people that I follow that actually record their podcasts with OBS. I haven't made that leap just yet, but I might do that. I might do that. Because I've invested so much time into this platform, I want to kind of use it for all the media things, within reason, of course. But I think that's pretty good. I think we've covered a lot of ground. The things we haven't touched on yet are the kind of bells and whistles that you can add on to OBS to kind of give your OBS setup a little extra pizzazz, a little extra flavor. But those will show up like in your tools menu. All the custom plugins kind of show up over here, and there's lots of cool stuff we're gonna do in the next lessons for sure. So just be warned though, Coder Cow. I'm really glad you're enjoying it, but this is quite a rabbit hole to go under. I have many hours have been set trying to get this right. So it's been a journey for sure. So just the little guy asks, are you going to post a recording? Absolutely yes. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this now, is because I will post this on my YouTube channel tomorrow, and I'll send a tweet out with the link. In fact, I'll go back to my fancy scene here. There we go. I will post the link out on Twitter, and that link will also be featured at some point in one of my slides on Friday, because I thought it was going to be kind of odd to give a presentation about OBS without me at least having one video tutorial in my pocket, so to speak, that can go into like the bigger details that I can't cover in that 20-minute talk. So yeah, it'll definitely be available. I will tweet it out, and it's the first of hopefully many. We will see. So, like I said, this is quite a journey, and I want to cover the concepts that you all would find most interesting, but I wanted to make sure we got the foundation in place. So, what's the best way you can get in touch? Well, obviously, send me a shout out on Twitter. You've seen it kind of scroll in that little footer, which, wait for it, the footer is a scene of scenes, of course. Send me a shout out there on Twitter. I'm at the R-cast if you have suggestions for topics you want me to explore. And I'm going to get back to kind of the shiny development as well with the shiny cow. Got lots of cool things in store for that too. And if you like what you've been seeing, certainly check out the back catalog. We'll plug that real quick before we head out of here. Go back to my chat. Yeah, where I've been doing most of my stuff lately is the Shiny Developer Series. It's on youtube.com/Shiny Developer Series. I have two types of playlists here. One is for all the interviews. Well, I don't know why that one showed up. That's the interview with Dean Natelli, but we have a whole boatload of cool interviews there. You can view the full playlist there. Check it out there. And then, as I mentioned, I post all the live streams as these videos after the fact. And so definitely check that out as well. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun to create this, and more to come for sure. All right. Well, we went a little over, but seems like you all stuck around, so I greatly appreciate it. And as I said, don't hesitate to contact me if you have other topics you want me to explore. Happy to dive into it. I can't say I know everything about this, but I definitely, with the help of very brilliant people in the community, on the Linux side and even just in the general streaming side, I've kind of know enough to hopefully help you avoid some of the pitfalls I fell into as I was starting to set this up before. All right, well, I think we're going to close up here. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. It's been a lot of fun to talk with all of you, and for you to join me. And I will see you sometime soon, next week, or perhaps even sooner. So bye for now. Thanks for coming, everybody.